Hey everybody, welcome back to the SuperBake podcast. I'm your host, Baker. Let's talk about stuff. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. So today I want to talk about the season finale for Rings of Power, titled Alloyed. Here we are, the end of the season. I'm just going to give my thoughts on this episode and then my thoughts on the season overall, now that I've seen every single episode. This one, so I guess the theme of this episode, it felt like they were setting up for season 2. I know they said that they're planning on doing at least 4 or 5 seasons total, I believe. So this definitely feels like it's segueing into the next season. There's some set pieces that it builds on for what's to come. But there are some pretty big reveals in this episode. So, of course, spoiler warning, as usual. So the wizard that befriends, or the character that befriends Nori, I guess I kind of gave it away by accident there. But yes, they do say that he is a wizard in this movie, or in this episode. There's kind of a little... They do a little switch on the audience. At first, the three strangers, the three mysterious people that are chasing after him, they do call him Sauron, but then it's later revealed that they mistook him for somebody else. And we actually get to see him, like his memories are restored to him, so he can actually speak in this one. He actually speaks in complete sentences. So that was actually kind of cool. It was cool to see his character actually talk to Nori's character. I think I'd predicted this earlier in the podcast, but he is in fact a wizard, similar to what Gandalf is. And actually, too, he has a cool little line in this movie. It's a little on the nose, but it is a nice little callback to the original trilogy, where before he sets out, he tells Nori, "When in doubt, always follow your nose," which is, of course, a line that Gandalf says in the Fellowship of the Ring when they're in the mines, trying to figure out which direction to go in. So that was a cool little callback. And the little confrontation we got between him and the three strangers, it was a cool little intense moment and kind of a sad little scene there too. I'll let you watch and see for yourselves there. I don't want to give away too much about it. The conclusion to the Harfoot's story in this episode and this season, I thought was nice. It was a good conclusion and pretty satisfying overall. I kind of figured that's who he was going to be. It seemed like it was a little bit too... I feel like it was going to be a little bit too obvious to make him Sauron, just given the fact that when we're first introduced to him, he's surrounded by a ring of fire. He seems to be a magic being. I just kind of kept thinking, like, it just seems too obvious to me. We do find out who Sauron is, and that's of course Halbrand's character, which I can't remember if I predicted that before when I was talking about earlier episodes. I may have, I can't remember, but I know I had said previously that I saw an episode that revealed the identity of Sauron, and so that was kind of spoiled for me, although I don't mind spoilers too much. But yes, it was Halbrand. He was the character that was in the video that had shown that he was Sauron, so yes. Galadriel does find it out. She does some research on his character, and then confronts him about it, and we get this pretty cool little confrontation between the two of them. We get to see that, and he does reveal himself, and the reveal is pretty interesting for the most part. I like that whole little scene where he kind of puts her under a spell, and there's some cool little special effects there that they use, so I like that aspect of it. As a whole, I thought Halbrand was an interesting character. I was kind of wondering what his overall connection was going to be to the story. And kind of his backstory, just because of the fact that they really didn't reveal a whole lot about him, other than that he was from the Southlands, and he seemed to be, at least Galadriel believed, that he was a king of some sort, or he came from a long line of kings and rulers. So I was curious to see how that was going to play out in this episode. So it was cool, and his reveal of Sauron was nice too. It's kind of cool to finally see they put a face to Sauron, because we've only ever seen him in the original trilogy with the giant suit of armor and stuff. So it's kind of cool that he now has an identity, kind of to see the face behind the mask. I don't know, personally, I think it's kind of interesting. I'm curious to see like how he's going to eventually transform into the giant towering figure from the original. The whole confrontation between him and Galadriel was cool. And he does get away in this episode, so I don't think I'm revealing too much about that. If they defeated him in the first season, there really wouldn't be much point in having, more. So he does escape. I don't think that's much of a reveal there. And makes his way to Mordor. And I will say, the final scene of this episode where we see Sauron walking into Mordor towards Mount Doom was really cool. And they play like a cool little final song at the end of the episode, which reminded me a lot of, I think it's the final song they play at the end of The Two Towers when Frodo and Sam are walking towards Mordor. It reminded me of that. And the song is actually, like the lyrics to it are actually kind of like they kind of give you sort of the introduction to the Fellowship of the Ring, where it talks about the rings of power and how they were created and things like that. So that was a cool little detail they added in there. We get to see what this whole thing has been building towards with the reveal of the Mithril and what they're going to do with it. And of course, the entire episode ends with them forging the 3 rings of power for the elves, so that the elves can essentially replenish their power and remain in Middle Earth. And then Halbrand, or Sauron, initially helps create those, but then, of course, he disappears after Galadriel confronts him and finds out who he truly is. But the rings are still forged. And so that was cool. And then I remember that from the original movie. There were 3 rings for the elves, 7 for the dwarves, and then 9 that were given to men, who eventually become the Nazgul, the ring wraiths. So what I'm curious to know is if there's going to be... So we've got the 3 rings for the elves that were created in this season. So the elves are basically, their story is essentially done as far as the construction of the rings of power go. So I'm guessing the next season or 2 is going to be about the dwarves, would be my guess. I assume that Durin is going to find some reason to reopen the mines to get more mithril. I would think they're going to have to in order to make more. So that's kind of my prediction. I'm guessing the next season is going to be that. The dwarves are going to be creating their rings of power, and then probably in the seasons afterwards, we're probably going to see them construct the rings of power for 9 humans, or the 9 kings, or whatever. And then I would assume that the second to last or the final season is going to be Sauron eventually constructing the 1 ring of power. What I'm really curious to know, though, is that in the last episode, the Balrog wakes up, and it literally ends on that cliffhanger, where all the mithril is located. So I'm really wondering if, like, how much of a role that's going to play in the following season. I would imagine it's going to be a big role for sure. I just wonder if there's going to be any connection between that and Sauron. I never read the Silmarillion, so I really want to, so I'm not really sure of the lore behind it. I don't really know what connection, if any, it has to Morgoth or Sauron. So I'm very interested to see what they do with that, how they explore that. And of course, obviously, I know that the creators of this show are taking a lot of liberties with the backstory and stuff like that, so they can do whatever they want with it. Obviously, they can do whatever the fuck they want with the Balrog, but I just want to see more of it. It's just such a cool design, and getting to see it again in this movie after so long was just such a nice treat for me. But yeah. As far as this episode goes, it was good. It was a good conclusion to the season, I felt, overall. The only thing I was a little bit surprised at was we didn't get to see very much of Dorian in this, which that was kind of surprising, given how much of a pivotal role he had in the story with the creation of the ring and giving the mithril to Elrond and the others to use. And also, we didn't get to see any more of Arondir or Bronwyn or Theo, which was also very surprising in this as well, because it was revealed they were alive in the last one. So I wonder if we're going to see more of their characters. I didn't find those 3 particularly interesting. I was just very surprised, given how big of a part they had in the season overall, like how they were not in this episode at all, at least not that I saw. So that was surprising, for sure. Just kind of felt like they were just suddenly omitted from the plot. So yeah, that was interesting. The focus of this really, in some ways, I guess the focus kind of came back to where it started with Galadriel, Elrond, and the elves, and kind of her conflict with Sauron. So again, if I had to make a prediction, like I was saying before, I would say that probably in the next season we'll probably see more of the other characters. They'll have a bigger part in this. Arondir and the others, and then also, of course, Nori and the wizard. So I assume that we're going to see more of them, their character arcs develop more in the seasons to come. And I assume, since I predicted that they were going to work on the Rings of Power for the dwarves next, that the Doran and the others will have a bigger part in the next season. And that'll be cool, because I've said before that I really like the stuff between Dorian and Elrond, so any excuse to have those 2 together again, I think, in the show is going to be, for me, is perfectly fine. I'm on board with that. But yeah. Overall, this episode, yeah, it was a good conclusion to the season. I think for the most part, it wraps up most of the loose ends. I still have a few questions, going forward. Like how does Sauron get his armor? How does he end up looking like the way he does in Lord of the Rings? You know, what's going to happen with the Balrog? That whole thing. I'm very curious to see how that's going to go. Yeah, I just have a lot of questions going into the next season. That I would have liked if we could have gotten a little bit more from that in this season, but yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's fine. Yeah, a decent season finale. I wanted a little bit more from it, but I think it works fine. It's setting up for the next one, so I guess I can't be too mad about that. As far as like my thoughts on the season overall, I would say for the most part, this season just feels like it was just mostly setup. It felt like it was mostly just setting up for bigger conflicts, and I don't normally have a big problem with that. The only thing is, I just feel like the payoff was not that great. Like episode 6 was probably my favorite because we actually had really, I think, the only really big climactic battle in the entire season. And the big battles, like I've said before, are kind of what I always considered synonymous with Lord of the Rings. When I think of Lord of the Rings, I always think of these giant action-packed battles between humans and dwarves and elves and orcs, and we get a little bit of that in this season, but we don't get a whole lot, and it's really only in one episode. So that was a little disappointing, but so hopefully maybe in the seasons to come, maybe we'll get more of that. Maybe now that the set pieces have been put in place, maybe we'll get some bigger, more epic battles. So that's kind of my hope, at least. So yeah, I would say I thought this season was fine. It didn't blow me away, which was definitely kind of disappointing, just given the budget and the fact that it's a Lord of the Rings series, and we've been waiting for this for, God, like almost 20 years now. It was definitely disappointing that it didn't. I just feel like it could have had a little bit more that it could have given us. Again, more epic battles, even just more stuff with the orcs, I think would have been cool. I always like the orcs. I like that aspect of Middle Earth and the Lord of the Rings lore, so it would have been cool if we could have gotten just a little bit more of them. That was actually some of my favorite scenes from the original trilogy were always the scenes of like the orcs, like when they're setting up their camps, like when they're in Isengard and they're tearing down the trees and they're creating their forges to make their weapons and building their armies and stuff. And when you see like just the industrialization of the orcs and how they're using their technical know-how to create their own weapons and their own armies, I always thought that was really interesting. I always liked that aspect of the Lord of the Rings series quite a bit. And I don't know, maybe I'm alone there. Maybe I'm in the minority there, but I don't know. I always liked that. So I would have loved to have seen more of that in this. I feel like we got little bits of it, just not a lot. Not even enough to really whet my appetite personally. So hopefully we'll get more of that in the next season. But overall, I would say this season just left me wanting more, basically. Which I guess is not a terrible thing for a season to do. I guess it's good that it makes me wanting more, and it has me at least interested to watch season 2, but I wouldn't say it has me overly excited. I guess the best way I can describe this season is I enjoyed it, I didn't love it, and it definitely has some weak points that I think need to be ironed out a little bit before season 2 hits. I think the first one, and I've talked about this before, is I think they need to work on making the characters a little bit more compelling and interesting. Again, I think the actors do a fine job. The actress that played, Morfydd Clark, who plays Galadriel, I think she does, a fine job in her role. The actor that plays Elrond is also very good. The actor that plays Halbrand in this episode, I thought probably was at his best. The scene where he reveals himself as Sauron to her, and we actually get a pretty intense, verbal confrontation between the two of them, was actually really cool, but it's very short-lived. I would have loved to have seen more of that in this season. It would have just been cool to see more of these intense moments with these characters, and I just felt like we didn't get a lot of that. So hopefully maybe that's something that we'll see in future installments, but for now, I gotta dock the season points for not giving me more of that. Again, like what we got for the most part with characters, especially with characters like Arondir, I like him. He's fine. I think the actor who plays him does a fine job. It's just as a character, he's just not particularly interesting. Didn't really feel like there was a whole lot to him, or Bronwyn, and their whole romance just felt kind of forced. It didn't feel natural. I don't know. Like, I'm hoping if they're in season 2 that it'll be more developed and we'll get to see more of their relationship develop in that. That's my biggest gripe with this season, and it's something that I really hope that they work on, is just try to improve the characters a little bit. Try to improve their story arcs and their development. Make them more compelling. Give me something to really latch onto with these characters. I just feel like right now they're okay and they have moments of greatness, but it just feels very inconsistent. Sometimes they're really interesting and I like them, but most of the time it just feels like they're not that compelling, especially, and I think this is especially noticeable in the slower, quieter scenes, when there's not a lot going on. And that's the biggest problem with this season, is that there's a lot of scenes like that. There's not a lot of action scenes in this season. There's a lot of smaller moments where it's characters talking, it's exposition. And these feel like they should hit harder and they just don't. And I think that's probably one of the biggest problems I have with this season. I think all the other issues I have with it would mostly just be me nitpicking for the most part. Just little things characters do that can be a little bit irritating, but overall, I mean, I liked it. In terms of production value, like the visual effects, yeah, of course. I mean, for a movie or for a show that costs like $1 billion, and each episode has a budget of $100 million. I mean, yeah, it damn well better look good, and it does. It looks fantastic. It has the quality of a movie, basically. So, like each episode does. And each episode feels almost kind of like a short movie. This episode, I think, the season finale, I think, was like an hour and 12 minutes. So it was, I think, the longest episode of the entire season, which I kind of expected. I was actually a little bit surprised that it wasn't longer. I was kind of expecting it to be like an hour and a half long. But yeah. I guess I would say I think that I've seen a lot of really bad buzz about this show. I've seen some of the criticism for it, and I think some of it is a little undeserved. I have heard some people calling it, just terrible and one of the worst things in television, and I don't agree with that. I mean, this is not season 8 of Game of Thrones, that's for sure. I might do a review of that at some point down the road, but yeah, I mean, just to give my thoughts on what I thought of Game of Thrones as a whole in the final season. But that's a conversation for another time. I'm not going to get into that now. I don't think this show so far deserves the hate that it's getting. It's fine. It's competent. I think it checks most of the boxes that it needs to be a competent high fantasy series. It's just, I feel like it's just missing certain qualities that would have helped elevate it to being a great show. I haven't seen House of the Dragon yet, but I've heard a lot of my friends say that they think it's the superior show to Rings of Power because it has some of those elements that this show is missing, like the interesting and compelling characters that help elevate it. So maybe I'll get HBO Max and watch that show and kind of compare the two and see how they stack up against each other. Maybe that might be something I do down the road. But I would say, as far as like recommendations go, yeah, I mean, I love Lord of the Rings. I've always preferred it over most of the other movie series. Like it's the original trilogy is probably one of my favorite trilogies ever. I like it more than the original Star Wars trilogy, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I wasn't disappointed with Rings of Power. I would say I liked it. I liked it fine. So I would say, yeah, check it out for sure. I think if you're a fan of the original series, I think you might get a little bit more out of this, especially if you've read the books and I would assume if you've read the Silmarillion, you might get more out of this too. One of my buddies read that book and he said that he liked it because there were some nods to it in this show. So he said he liked that aspect of it. So yeah, I think if you like the lore and if you like the original series, I think you'll like this more. I think it does a fine enough job for like newcomers who aren't familiar with the story to at least kind of catch you up and explain to you who is who and what the stakes are here. Like I said, I just kind of wish I wish there could have been more character in this, more interesting characters and more epic battles. I just feel like it was kind of lacking in that regard. So hopefully that's something that the studio will work on in future installments. Hopefully we'll get more of that. So yeah, overall, I would say if I had to give it a letter grade, I'd probably say I'd give it a solid B. Good, not great, but certainly not terrible, and most definitely not the worst thing out there. So I think, for sure, if you're looking for something to watch, you can do far worse than this show. So I would say definitely check it out. And obviously, once again, let me know your thoughts and opinions on this. I'm always curious to hear what you guys think about these series. So, all right, I think that's going to conclude it for my thoughts on The Rings of Power Season 1. I'll look forward to Season 2. Of course, once it comes out, I will post my thoughts on it on my podcast. So next, I want to talk about the trailer that just dropped recently for the new John Wick Chapter 4. So, movie comes out March 24th, 2023. So I've seen the first movie. I think I've seen bits and pieces of John Wick 2, and I saw John Wick 3 in theaters a few years ago. And yeah, I fucking love these movies. I can't wait for this film. I mean, I don't know what it is about the John Wick films. I mean, they just kick so much ass, and it's pretty much just Keanu Reeves just kind of being himself and having fun. I mean, I love Keanu Reeves. I mean, the dude's like a national treasure. I mean, how can you not love him? He just seems like he's just enjoying himself so much in these movies, and his delivery in this trailer is hilarious. Like, I love when it's so cheesy. His delivery is like, he's not a good actor by any means. I think he does his best, I guess, but like to me, he's kind of like, he's one of those actors, like he's like Christopher Walken in a sense. Like, he's just himself, and I think he's built himself up enough in Hollywood that he can kind of get away with it. I mean, he's fucking Keanu Reeves. Come on. But just like his deliveries in this trailer are so great. Like, I love the scene when he's talking to the guy in the church in the beginning of the trailer, and he says, the guy says, "You're gonna die," and he's like, "Maybe not," and like just the way he delivers that line. It's such a Keanu Reeves way to deliver it. I love it. I love the guy. Like, like Speed, the Matrix films, The Devil's Advocate, just everything he's in. I don't know what it is about him. I love him. He's not a particularly great actor, but just you can't help but love the guy. A lot of people in this movie too. Donnie Yen I believe he's from IP Man, is going to be in this. Of course, Lawrence Fishburne is coming back. Hiroyuki Sanada, who played, he's been in many movies. He was also Scorpion in the new Mortal Kombat movie. Love that actor. He is awesome. Ian McShane, fucking phenomenal as well. Lance Reddick, great. Clancy Brown, which really surprised me. I thought that was his voice in the scene where he's talking about the rules of the fight that's to come. Like, he's I thought I recognized his voice. I wasn't 100% sure on that. And then I was surprised I saw this chick in the trailer. I think her name is Natalia Tena, who I think was from Game of Thrones. I think she played the wildling that the Starks take in. So it's cool seeing her in more movies. Halle Berry apparently is also signed on to this film as well. And another surprise appearance in this movie that I saw in the trailer was Bill Skarsgård, who he's been in quite a few movies lately. He was in the new movie, I'm drawing a complete blank on it. The one that just came out, the horror movie. But yeah, he's the guy who played Pennywise from the It films. So seeing him in this movie, that was awesome. In the trailer, I like Bill Skarsgård. He seems like a really cool guy, really good actor. So I'm curious to see him in this movie. I think that's going to be, I can't wait to see this film. It's been a while since I've seen the third movie. I need to go back and watch it again. I don't remember a whole lot of the plot of that film. But yeah, I can't wait to see this movie. I think it's going to be phenomenal. It looks like it's just going to deliver all the same stuff that we've come to expect from John Wick and Keanu Reeves. And Keanu Reeves, I mean, he's up there. Like, he's pushing is it? I think he's like in his mid 60s right now. Oh no, he's not. I'm way off. He's 58. Okay, so he's relatively young. But yeah, like it's such a great movie, or a great film series, I should say. This looks like it's going to have all the things that you would expect from a John Wick movie. You see the awesome gunfights. There's a really cool gunfight in the trailer where it looks like he's fighting his way up a bunch of stairs, like taking out guys one by one as they come crashing down. So that's really cool looking. There's a really cool scene that I dug. It gave me like Indiana Jones Uncharted vibes, where he's chasing these guys on horseback through a desert and he's like shooting them off in the distance. It's like, I really liked that. That was really cool. Looks like there's going to be quite a fair amount of globetrotting in this movie, which I'm all for. And then of course you get to see the one fight in the movie that I can't wait to see is, it looks like there's going to be a really badass sword/gun fight near the end. You get a little bit of a tease of it in the trailer, where John Wick is fighting this guy and blocking shots he's blocking bullets with a sword, basically, which is fucking just so cool. It's so ridiculous. That's what I love about these movies. It's just like, you can't help but love it. I'm trying to find that movie that Bill Skarsgård is in, because this is driving me crazy. I need to know. It's like, I just had it. I just saw a trailer for it like not too long ago. Let's see. I know. Let's see. It's Barbarian. That's it. I couldn't think of it. Barbarian. Yeah. I kept wanting to say Abomination. I don't know why. No, it was Barbarian. That's it. That's a movie I'm interested in watching too. But sorry, I'm sorry for that segue. I had to look it up because it was driving me crazy. But yeah. But anyways, yeah, like this movie just looks like it's just going to take everything from the first three films and just up the ante just incredibly. I can't wait to see it. So I'm excited to see. I'm excited for this film. And honestly, like, it doesn't really give any hints this might be the final movie. Like, they kind of drop hints that John Wick might die, but I feel like they do that in every film. So I don't know. I personally, I don't know what their plans are. I haven't really done much research on the John Wick series, so I don't know if this is going to be part of a new trilogy or if they're going to just keep making movies until they can't anymore. Honestly, I'm kind of in favor of them just if they just keep it going as long as they can, because I love this film series. It's just so enjoyable, and I am absolutely going to have to go back and watch the first three again just to get ready for this one. So yeah, I'm excited. Like, obviously, this is not a movie you go to see for quality filmmaking. This is to go watch Keanu Reeves just shoot the shit out of everybody, and this trailer looks like it's going to give you exactly that, and I can't wait for it. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to this film for sure. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it for tonight's episode. Once again, I am on Anchor, Spotify, and YouTube. Feel free to follow, like, and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time. Later.